Today's date is April 29th in the year 2019. Welcome to OTB TV News. Now, I'm going to cover this story in brief. I'm going to give my opinion on this story. That's what I'm going to be doing here in this audio only recording. There's going to be more podcasts on this YouTube channel. Sometimes I do like doing things early in the morning without turning the lights on and just focusing on the message. What you're looking at is a map of the areas that are described as the quote-unquote sanctuary cities. Now, as we begin this, I begin this podcast reminding you that I am a independent. I also think that there are more important things in this world than politics, but there are certain things that are taking place within the arena of modern politics, domestic policy, that are actually the result of a larger program that few humans on the ground are actually aware of. Quite often, the people that are positioned into these positions of power are selections. I predicted Trump would be the selection. So as we go into this, right, we're not going into this with a partisan cap or a partisan hat. That's not going to help people understand the shadow government. You know, the thing that they don't really refer to anymore when they're talking about the deep state. And those that use that language, let's just get all this out of the way in the beginning. It's part of that left-right paradigm to even say deep state. Old school conspiracy researchers like myself. I don't yet go all the way back to the 1990s, but certainly the 2000s. Got involved when I was in my early 20s. I was basically 20 years old in the year 2000. And so I came up not in the controlled left or right, but questioning the entire situation, especially since the 2000 election, snowballing forward. And in 2005, while George Bush Jr. was still the president, looking at some of these concepts. And so I wasn't mesmerized by Barack Obama, nor was I mesmerized by Donald Trump. When I see some of these declarations and articles say, well, you know, this didn't start with Trump, it did start with Obama, that doesn't make it right either. That doesn't make it right either. There could be an argument made that there's a psychological operation to just numb us out completely to these things and for society to not recognize people like myself and others that stayed out of the partisan game. I mean, there are some people over the years that said they were woke when George Bush was the president, only to see Obama as something different 8 years later for people to do the same thing with Donald Trump. And so the reason why this type of an introduction is needed as we examine this story is what we're actually looking at is problem, reaction, solution. The headline is Donald Trump threatening to dump illegal aliens in sanctuary cities. Hey, you guys say you want them? Here, take them. And you know that's a popular meme that and statement way this is being presented as he doubles down on this. And so this is a complicated issue, and we can go on and on for hours. That's my kitty, wants to be left or let out. And that is not going to happen, kitty. That is not going to happen, kitty. And so it's going to be an adjustment to doing some of the recordings with a cat. But it does eventually get the point. And because it's a black cat and there's certain superstitions around black cats, well, I wouldn't want anything to happen to it, but also I wouldn't want it to attract perhaps some negative energy to myself out of a certain paranoia. So there are superstitions that are taking place with regards to humans, not just black cats. And with a lot of what I'm seeing right now in the news regarding this perceived migrant threat from Central America, this is something that I've always felt, as well as the fake Sharia law invasion memes. This is something that threatens Americans that are minorities, that aren't even foreigners. This has been a long-standing issue on this channel, and the mainstream media hasn't even really brought that out. Like even Islamophobia, by the way, doesn't at all describe racism to people of Middle Eastern heritage, where people fear that they're Muslim when they're not even Muslim. I mean, there are other issues at play here with these types of major declarations, with people perceiving that certain things are the only things that are a threat to them. Meanwhile, they may not be looking at the changes in the sun. They may not be looking at other things that can threaten their infrastructure. They're looking at where the finger is pointing them. Problem, reaction, solution. And so what I want to get out, most importantly here, is my warning to you. And this needs to be cross-examined with previous warnings. So if you're a new viewer, checking out things like Man Has a Vision of China or Russia walking up in our grill or invading the United States, invading America, and listen to his vision, and then listen to maybe some of the other videos. There's one on VHX where I talk about my human trafficking warning to women. And it's very important that people understand that I've been discussing this for 10 years and that I foresee a manufactured situation to bring Americans to their knees, maybe literally and metaphorically. Will there ever be an AmericanForSale.com, for example? Certainly there was an America for Sale, the book by Jerome Corsi, who one could say turncoat and was maybe a part of the controlled opposition the entire time to point things in the directions of birth certificates and things in certain that go in certain directions. And we look at his associations, and now things are a little bit more clear. How people can take a little bit of truth, like America being basically sold off to the highest bidder. How they can release something like that back during the day of George Bush, during the last few years of his administration, because maybe there was infighting within the Republican Party, the GOP, so it's convenient to do that. Only to, how many years later, endorse a member of the establishment that's doing the exact same thing. There's been no change in direction, in my opinion, with the idea of U.S. infrastructure being weakened by design through these people that are selections, really, in the end, that continue to serve the big banks, the military-industrial complex, that continue to send us on this path of borrowing money from China to prop up these overseas wars. There's been no change in direction. There's been no change in direction. And so the economic sovereignty of even Trump supporters are threatened by continuing this blind allegiance to this person that's given the military a blank check. But they keep the focus on non-whites. They keep the focus on this because this is something epic that's really gonna define really almost the next 80 years at least. And I don't know why 2100 comes so strongly to me, but we are not out of the woods. We are entering some sort of new high-tech dark ages. Oh, there could be solar activity. But unless there's solar activity that disrupts the whole world grid, AI, that is, the entire shadow government has to be shut down by something larger than life or larger than us. Maybe that which gives us life. And so that's why those that are on the bandwagon of doing doom and gloom within the solar minimum movement, they need to understand that our own society is on a highway to hell. There's more than fear when looking at the potential of what's to come. There's also the spiritual side of it. But in the end, where X marks the spot coming out of the 2020s, because we will come out of the 2020s, you have this staged, managed conflict with China brewing. And so I mentioned earlier Leon's vision, and for years I've been talking about what I feel is coming to the West Coast, not just the West Coast, but this comes to mind as I look at these dots. And I've always seen the idea of the invasion maybe even being a invitation, but in the end, women suffering the most, just like they do in other countries. Unfortunately, we've seen the dumbed down state of our fellow country women and men and women here in the United States. We've seen people obsessed with the mirror on the wall. Who's the prettiest on the wall? Who's the most popular on the YouTube subscription feed? Da-da-da-da-da. They've given us so many ways to worship ourselves, to worship that ass and market that ass. And we're not going deep down the labyrinth of prostitution, or I was going to say relationships, or the world's oldest profession, human trafficking / prostitution. But these social issues that have been with us for more than a millennia rear their ugly head with technology trying to aggravate that inner barbarian, that inner part of us from the older world, the old world. Many other ways to define it other than that. But there is a number of things that's within our blood, regardless of ancestry, around the world, to where technology can come in if they're receiving that technology, and they can be activated. They can be turned towards evil. And one of the things, the devil's biggest trick is keeping the humans asleep to the reality that it plays both sides, or it plays groups off against each other. You would hear people from the old school talk about that. They don't do that now. Or if they do that, they're still using it in a tongue to demonize immigrants or non-whites, to get on board this type of narrative of the death of Western civilization. And yet, you're listening to a person with your own choosing, by your own choosing, by your own hand. I surely hope no one is making you, by force, listen to this. If so, that would be a tragedy. And I do not condone that behavior. I do not condone anyone using my podcast or voice and forcefully making other people listen to it. So cease and desist if you are doing that. So it is assumed that each and every one of you tuning in now wants to hear this. Do some people take information, use it for their own agenda? Whether they know it or not, whether they find that right or not, it's happened for years. And are there certain conclusions that I've come to that I've chosen to leave off YouTube? Is there a special half-hour discussion coming on VHX in the next 24 hours? Thank you, Mike, for joining. Our new member. Yes, there is. There is a very special discussion about universal law that is coming up on VHX, and the things that we learn in our lifetimes, and the things that give us hope in the universe, where there is true law and order, because there is true law and order, and then there is Donald Trump playing on Norse mythos. Law and order is a spiritual concept within Northern Europe, early pagan spirituality before the spread of Orthodox Christianity. And there's some interesting things there. And so we can see things or hear things that are said by people that are positioned in power by the archons to say things that will activate the ancestral memory. And Donald Trump has done that in a way more than any other human. And it was clear to me early on that George Bush was there to, I'm an idiot, folks. And then Barack Obama was there to come out and say, make it look like a black guy did it. And then you have Donald Trump, who was clearly there to play the return of the king, like something Arthurian. And something about a soul like me in this body was able to recognize these archetypes of clowns that came, that in a way paved the way for the Trump deception. For the guy who's going to act in an arrogant, boastful manner, and how we're going to see people respond to that type of supposed alpha male 72-year-old behavior. Kamikaze behavior. Let it ride. Let the whole economy ride on this. Yeah! America! Barbecued humans. Let's not look back. Law and order. There are no victims of war. Law and order. Never look back. Never forget. Take all these other people with them. And it's like there's a kamikaze attitude that goes with that the people alive today are not supporting. And the left is really powerless to stop the military industrial complex unless they actually start addressing it on a bipartisan level. And the elements within the Democrats, like Bernie Sanders and others, that are compromised to the military industrial complex as the drone attacks continue, they've got nothing to say. So the idea of dumping illegal immigrants by design, on one level, it's like a threat. On another level, could it play into the warning that I've given you for over a decade of the human trafficking epidemic? Could the government inadvertently, knowing or unknowingly, play a role in that through actions like this? Actions like this on one level seem to be, we're making a tough stand. You want him, you got him. Could there be then also, though, if there is some collaboration between our government and other governments on a deeper level to punish the population, to quell the population, to control the population in the event that elements of the population want to, resist? But not like in a hashtag sense. I mean, like in a real sense. Against what, Alex? Well, against certain declarations that haven't come yet. After certain manufactured events go into motion, there could be certain declarations that certain people, certain humans that may not be considered Americans or may not be considered Americans in the future, may be ordered to certain places within the United States for everyone's safety. We know what I'm getting at. Would there be certain resistance? More so than we saw with regards to the peace movement in Vietnam, but something like that, a resistance. Bigger than the controlled opposition, something that they necessarily may not be able to control, or it will seem that way. Something that could even cause elements of the White House to call in their boys, other troops from somewhere else. And for years, we've wargamed different potentials on this based on who's in office. There's been the Bush version of this. There's been the Obama version of this. There's the Trump version of this based on how things really work. And if one could see him as a part of a global order system, someone that's been selected, someone that's not really a rogue individual, as they prepare for these conflicts around the world where the winner has already been decided, Trump's playing a role in the destruction of the United States. And he doesn't even have to be the one to light the match. They can hand it off to Biden, creepy Uncle Joe. You know, there's a deeper reason why he was touching those children. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, indeed. There's a deeper reason Joe Biden was touching those children. You know, the idea of compromise, congressmen being compromised, the idea that many people have been placed in power to play a role when the red buttons are pushed. And there was almost a sense of, in the creepy Joe Biden, Uncle Joe videos, a sense of open telegraphing that, hey, we know who your kids are. Hey, this is actually metaphoric for the deeper level of control that we have over you and the American people. That's why it can be put out there in plain sight. Creepy Uncle Joe touching the children and there not being some sort of a national uproar. There was a discussion about it, and the people pretty much laughed at it. And so I saw CNN, David Pakman, and others play a role in the desensitization of the groping of these children. And so on a subconscious level, this type of imagery affects the consciousness of the people that are receiving that. So the people are watching it on CNN and the people that are getting the mainstream media talking point response that it's just your grandpa being affectionate. It's not actually something creepy. It's just grandpa. It's just grandpa. Really? Who's grandpa? Certainly not my grandpa. Your grandpa? And see, America's gotten weird all of a sudden. It didn't start yesterday. And I see these articles say, well, why are you blaming Trump? Obama did it. Again, calmly being stated now, people like myself that are in the independent media, we haven't been compromising. It wasn't right then. It should have been discussed then. If it wasn't discussed then. There's plenty of elements of corruption that have never come out. There's plenty of things that I would love to really know about what's been going on overseas. To know the full truth about certain things I'm not going to get into, things they've done to others. And it seems like the things that I've been ranting about for years that people have rolled their eyes at as if I've been exaggerating war crimes. It seems like there's like piles and piles of papers coming out that, yes, true, but they're not being found guilty. Now move on. And I think the audience needs to also just acknowledge this moment, that we are in a moment of time where there is the acknowledgement of these things that are taking place, but because it's a time of war and whatever excuse that they're making, they're doing things that Americans certainly wouldn't want done to them. Certainly you would never want certain things done to your children. If there is a force of darkness occupying this nation. So do I think within the conspiratorial lens plot to what they want to do to American women, white American women, some sort of a plan for the future? It certainly includes genetics, and those genetics that they would like to control and reproduce with. Does this include off-world agendas? I think it's all tied together. That there is a concentration of certain types of bloodlines within this continent that there is a agenda for. There's even something even karmically related, whether you want to hear that or not. That's not wishing harm on anyone. It's more like I feel like I was born to say the things that no other human is saying. Even if there are spiritual movements where they talk about karma and yoga and energy work and Reiki, I see a lot of selfishness and hocus pocus and misuse of the elemental forces, which brings bad luck. I repeat, misuse of the elemental forces and getting involved with spirits brings bad luck. Here's another bit of advice. Don't throw rocks if you live in a glass house. Don't throw rocks if you live in a glass house. Again, we're going to be doing a special podcast or video report on VHX with additional spiritual insights that I've picked up on recent years from case studies, interactions with the supernatural, and how I would define that. Not exactly something like out of Poltergeist, the movie, but very much in relation to the work that I've done on the internet, how it seems to at times have brought either bad luck or strange energy, caustic personalities that seem to have been positioned there to throw me off the trail, to distract me. And after years of maintaining the path and not allowing certain distractions and micro YouTube wars to consume me, there is additional information that I have to share, and the discernment that some things are for the public and some things are just for friends. Some things are just for journals or members only sections. YouTube has a lot of dirt associated with a video platform that is monitored by artificial intelligence, which is a tool of something more sinister. And so the audience member that may be unaware of these things, that may just see these platforms as forms of entertainment, it's not just a form of entertainment. Unfortunately, it's been weaponized. And so keep in mind the lifestyles that change for American-born minorities when all of a sudden people that don't know them are looking at them like maybe they're a border crosser. Like these discussions aren't even being had, that this type of systematic drumming into these people's minds through Fox News about what's taking place, and it can even be orchestrated down south somewhere in one of the migrant countries for there to be a problem reaction solution for a whole path of people to be moving at once, for this to lead to some sort of a social engineering or brainwashing or implanted fear within a society of those that aren't white, while they themselves, through the YouTube controlled mechanism, are being told that YouTube doesn't like them, that YouTube Creators for Change is doing other than it does that for PR. It'll use minorities even in positions of particular types of occupations. Elements of the society will use minorities, black women, others, in certain types of occupations. It doesn't mean that they don't have skills or don't deserve to be working for some of those occupations. It's that ultimately there can be an agreement, if you will, between that minority. If they're not really working to affect change for others and just themselves, then there can be that agreement then, that co-optive, cohesive partnership between the corporation, the institution, and that minority. As long as they don't try to buck the system and thus try to bring everyone else up to par. And there's a number of different ways that ways in which I've witnessed this, and ways in which you can also witness this online with certain types of elections in various places in the United States. But then you get to see in the end, after their tenure, who they're really serving. And not to necessarily beat them up, but to see if they even are in a position to be making changes for others. Or if they're in a position, we're not necessarily talking about elected office at the moment. Let's talk about something like management. Let's talk about something like sales. Let's talk about something like social services, mental health. Let's talk about something like that to where somebody can be easily axed or eliminated by their boss for bucking the way that things are done. They're not there to buck the things that have been done for a long time. They are there to hold up the status quo while holding up some sort of a projection that things are changing for people that are different. And so the long-term social repercussions for this never-ending bombardment that you're being invaded is a whole slew of future suicides of American-born children that are told that they aren't at the same level, that they are somehow infecting the rest of society. This type of meme is absolutely destructive and comes from the archonic realms. Now, I'm going to try to bring this to a close on this point that I want to make sure people understand. That things like this, if something were to happen, where he doubles down and says they're going to be releasing people in some of these areas, and then people look at that like that could be some sort of a threat. What if they were to handpick super hardened criminals? What if this was to be like something out of Scarface? Cue the Scarface soundtrack. And what if some of these handpicked individuals have a role to carry out? Why would there be people that would say they're elements of the government that are rogue under certain administrations and then say that things are fine now, or that they're isolated to being controlled by the Democrats because they like Trump? Alex Jones himself telegraphs that there's like a shadow government side of Trump, but he's saying it's good, it's good. Well, in their mind, it's going to be good when they manufacture things to get their way. But when they come out on the open and say, we're going to just do this, and there may just be some unfortunate things that happen to you guys because we have to do this like this, who's to say that certain people aren't specifically being released, like super violent offenders? People that have engaged in sexual assault, people that wouldn't mind doing it again. If there's already that type of telegraphing that there could be this type of back and forth, wow. In the world of guild actors, where everything that he does, same thing with Obama, same thing that Bush did, everything was controlled that they did to extract a certain reaction from the population. This acceleration towards a manufactured civil war is the type of thing that can bring upon that type of retaliation and people being violent to each other based on political lines, based on the things that are being done. And so Bush can be controlled. Obama could be trolled by the archons. And then the next guy can be controlled. But the people on the ground that don't realize that aren't having discussions about the control structure. And the modern conspiracy theory movement, if you will, going to, the front page of YouTube, it's like going into a McDonald's, not to knock eating there once in a while, but it's like this mass-produced talking point, like this type of stuff that's there to keep people busy. With a food analogy, it's just something that you eat. It's just something that people watch, just something that's entertaining, but it has no real deep nutritional substance. It has no spiritual backbone. It has no spirit infused into it. The information, like that McChicken sandwich for $1, which I'll eat once in a while, I'm eating it because it's food, to get food inside my stomach because I'm hungry and I'm not at the budget to where I can go eat somewhere really, really nice. I'm not saying that to complain. I'm saying that to be honest, and that's the reality of it. And I'm using McDonald's as an analogy without beating up others that may eat at McDonald's, confessing my own, explaining that that is a good metaphor. There are some things that are richer in nutrition. There are some ideas that are richer in spirit, in concepts. And that's not what you get on the front page of youtube.com, which is now the mainstream media. It promotes the mainstream media. It promotes the mainstream fake conspiracy news, which divides us by race. The mainstream fake conspiracy news divides us by race. I literally see exactly what the new YouTube is. It literally has maybe it has the few people that it's going after all the time. I'm not for Cortez or against her. I don't see how she's significant in my life. And I don't see how she is the number one boogie woman of the world. But according to YouTube and the YouTube algorithm, she is the wicked witch of planet Earth, according to YouTube. And the YouTube that people think that it is, the shiny, happy, colored people holding hands, that's not the YouTube that reflects itself to me. And so, like, it reflects these paradigms, it reflects these worlds. And then people also may end up so delusional on YouTube that they're cursing YouTube while YouTube's making them rich. We've seen Christopher Green and other sensationalist fearmonger individuals do this, literally making money through those hits or clicks off of videos claiming that they're being victimized by the system. Now, that type of deep false reality to where they're financially benefiting off of an actual literal narrative that they're being buried by the algorithms, right? I mean, we're in a form of digital hell now where things are still plush, where there's still soft cushions, where there's still a deep fry fast food restaurant near you. But it's like we're living off of the bones of the dying world. It's like there's a spirit of this realm that's under attack, and elements of our species are acting like it's overtaken them. The nothingness. And the question is, has it taken over you? What you have control over is yourself. What we don't have control over are others and their level of consciousness. And so this is where the spiritual teachings come into play. There's going to be a number of new videos on VHX in the coming week. I'm going to estimate about 4 to 5, and each one of them hitting on something that I'm going to keep off of YouTube that deals with my own growth in this matrix, things that I'm learning about things and what we put our attention on, things that I'm learning about the effects of some of my actions, including positive ones that may not come all at once, but come later. I've also seen bad luck happen to things that I've talked about that are positive on YouTube, and so I want to be able to share some of those positive things. But because of the nature of what I speak about on the dark elements that are out there on a medium where anyone can watch, because of what I talk about in the blend of topics and some of the assortment of audience members that have been quietly watching behind the scenes, not necessarily with the most positive intentions, some things will never be for them again. Okay, we'll do some martial arts exercises on VHX later on this week. We'll do some other things. Hang on to your horses if you're already a member. In time, we'll get to those videos. And so, there has been kind of a deeper, revelation still taking place. It's still taking place within to the value of my own content and my own message. But it's not going to be represented here on YouTube and through the views. I appreciate your support, and I'm asking you to join me, especially those that have supported and donated over the years, in evolving beyond this type of a platform that is so embedded with evil. I mean, it's interested in brainwashing you and sending you to disinformation artists after you watch me. Listen to the sound of your friend Alex. It's going to literally recommend that you go into the dark portal of consciousness after you watch this. It wants to use me. YouTube would use me to send you in the direction of people that even hate me. I want you to absorb this gnosis. Think about this. There are actually people that think nothing about me and my content, that YouTube will auto-suggest that you listen to them instead because there's something about them as a human that YouTube and the algorithm and AI has determined more valuable. And I know what it is. And so do others. And now there's news coming out about this algorithm and how it rates humans. And it's time for humans to catch up with the fact that now we're not just talking about racism in humans, we're talking about robots and programming. We are in 2019, ladies and gentlemen. Pull your ass out of 2015 or 1980 or wherever it's been. We are not just dealing with humans on the ground. We're dealing with a larger agenda to control the earth. What you're seeing now with this type of, we're going to infect your communities with more brown people, and this type of programming that is absorbing these people. This is the zombie apocalypse. This is the zombie apocalypse. We're already in it. They may not look like, dead people, but there's a deadening inside of the heart. There are people talking about solar flares that have yet to have that solar energy impact their heart to where there's compassion for others that have been harmed more than them, that have had less than them in this world. That's the type of solar hit that some of us need in the heart to have the empathy for others, to understand that things are not just about our own lives and our own nation states, to actually be able to be interconnected with nature, to feel the trees, to feel nature. I know what I see in mainstream society. We are on a highway to a dark ages of digital hell. That's why it's different now in America, in rural communities. Because now we're in the day and age of the smartphone. Now we're in the day and age of Fox News being beamed into all these different, and so they can literally live a collective nightmare for something that's not even happening while they live alongside majestic nature that was stolen from the Indians. While they live amongst something so beautiful that was actually stolen from others, they're then not even going to appreciate that beauty itself and those majestic mountains and the sun and the air and the elements and the water. Instead, like this whoomp, whoomp, whoomp. And yet what really frightens people is the system coming down, the solar flares taking out the system, a system that's doing what? Perfecting its ability to kill massive amounts of people in short periods of time, using technology to do it, but most of all, brainwashing humans to do it. This is a system that we want to defend. And then pay attention to people that fearmonger about all the systems coming down and the weather systems humbling the human species, as if that's the worst potential thing to happen within this realm. Things are becoming clear to me. Things are becoming clear to others that we're not all of the same similar soul group family. Earth is a melting pot. In the digital arena that has given so many of us a voice where we didn't before, it's showing us the contrast in some of the places that we actually come from. And audience members that may hover around certain intelligences that are spewing certain levels of fear about this world being humbled, a world that clearly has no problem mowing down millions to billions in a single breath. And I don't mean the earth itself. We're talking about this technology that humans have control over now, and those parasitic forces that have control over the humans. And the humans that have an interest in ufology, leak projects around aliens and things, they will never connect it with the humans controlled by aliens to call other humans off the planet. You will never hear that at any conference. You will never hear anyone speak about those things at those UFO conferences. They would be banished, they would be shunned, they would be turned away. Especially if it's a person of the bloodline of those actual lands. Study the demographics. Study the demographics. Study the demographics of the Project Camelot type, leak conference type, other type of so-called awake truthers of your collapsing civilization, and ask yourself who's left out, and ask yourself why they don't care when this issue is addressed. The missing Alex Ansary from the equation, from being recognized, from being on a roster list. There would be one name always missing from the collective of all these groups, as well as his ideas. And don't you ever deny it. People come and waste my time and go, Alex Ansary, have you heard of this dude? Get the fuck out of here. If anything, ask them, what about Alex Ansary? What's most important is that my ideas and my warnings to the women of this nation and the Western world get out there. Is that there are criminal men amongst your society that you're not even aware are plotting against you, that would actually do certain things and send certain things into motion to then get their way, even if women are harmed. Even if there's an unsafe situation, because that doesn't need to happen that way, like a Scarface scenario. We're going to all release them in these areas where there's a high concentration of hot bodies. As we look at the West Coast there, what did Uncle Alex Ansary, not Jones, what did Ansary warn you about for over 10 years? A coming potential human trafficking epidemic on the West Coast that could probably be a combination of cartel groups working with foreign governments, maybe cartel groups or others on the ground doing the roundups. So during a time of collapse, other foreign militaries or groups coming in would have maybe distribution plants or warehouses where the bodies would be stored, the living bodies, the assets, to then be transported by water through the Columbia River as one of the potential exit points, citing a history of men in particular being shanghaied by water in old Portland, knowing it happened before. And Americans are mostly ignorant of the realities of the Shanghai days, and they appear to be totally ignorant of the realities of how it can happen again, why their girls were sexualized early on, why they created certain types of even pornography where these scenarios actually played out. And they would like literally dump that like a bunch of crap and fake news onto the internet, hoping people would find it and attach themselves to it, alongside fantasies of aliens in 3D. And then we would have really a taboo in society of having adult conversations about propaganda. We live now in 2019 where there's more of a taboo about talking about propaganda in mainstream pornography. Because I don't see anyone, talking to me and adding things in this conversation. I think more people are just want to be narcissists and talk about themselves. I don't see women of this culture talking about how women in other cultures have been molested, abused by their own military and what that's all about, where the science from that comes from. Instead, people go off into other areas to continue to make themselves victims in this narcissist society. Create your own spirituality. Here's a buffet. Here, create your own reality. Have whatever you want in this buffet. Oh, would you like some Jell-O? That's basically of the color blue. You can have some Jell-O that's colored blue, red, green. Let's create your own spirituality. That's right, honey. You're a princess. And so let me tell you, a real women's movement, a real woman that cares about women's rights, she would be involved in this conversation about social engineering. Even racism, because if a woman of a particular gender or ethnicity is devalued in the mind of someone else through propaganda, then she's being set up for harm. And so if women have been set up for harm from other societies and other ethnicities, and women are silent about it within this society, the mainstream or the main demographics, that's never good. And they need to be reminded that the silence that they're allowing to go on is a part of it's the jam that goes with the peanut butter and bread. A peanut butter and jelly sandwich is made up of 3 components to be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Otherwise, it would just be a peanut butter sandwich. But to be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you need peanut butter and jelly. Otherwise, it's just a peanut butter sandwich. And so if you have men and women, women and men, collectively silent about important things in a day and age where they have the right, the freedom of speech. If you have the right to exercise your freedom of speech in a private email or on a YouTube video, and you can be anonymous, and no one would even catch you, princess. Or prince if you're male. And you say, hey, I'm a prince, I'm male. Okay, prince. There's a lot of princes and princesses out there. There's a lot of men out there with prince complexes. So this culture has produced a lot of boys and girls with princess and prince complexes. They think they're royalty for some reason. What is this genetic blueprint? That some people are royals, or they were born during the wrong generation to where other people have more and they're not as royal anymore. What's going on? I'm not a royal anymore. I'm not Queen Sheba anymore. And isn't that what many people have been struggling with their mental health episodes? That they're not royals, right? That the economy is kind of shifting really dramatically. You know, it's not so easy to get by the way that we were in the past off our good looks or something to that effect. Is it that reality is starting to hit people slowly and not everyone's been prepared to deal with reality, either by their parents, institutions? I mean, because I can surely see how the institutions haven't taught people a damn thing about the sun. And I can surely see how those that do talk about the sun that do really well do it from a terrifying perspective and will run over the bodies of other researchers and individuals that also have something to say about the sun. I mean, people actually literally take things and they'll put on a competitive helmet and they will be in like beast mode with it. Like literally that character that Woody Allen played in the movie 2012. Okay, type in Google Woody Allen 2012. Look at that character. That's not been someone that I'm trying to emulate. And those parts of me, right, that could even be compared to that, that's not who I am and what I'm trying to be. So when I show you a map like this, and I talk to you about problem, reaction, solution, whoever the president is, and I talk to you about the many years of warning women of this culture and society, and it not even being something that YouTube would ever auto-suggest that you find out about me and my warnings. I would literally have to write a book. And I would have to write in that book how YouTube would never recommend what I would consider to be my core content. It would send you in other directions to where I felt that I was competing with an algorithm. Isn't that crazy? Wouldn't you find that crazy? That Alex Answer in 2019 would already feel that an algorithm was set in place, an algorithm of oppression, not only to keep people away from my best content, but to attempt to prevent my ideas, at least under the banner of Alex Ansary, from preventing the world. Well, I will not be limited. Ideas live on. They live on beyond names. Ideas that can save the world. Blueprints that could be created and open sourced. This spirit inside this body, no matter how much propaganda they create, I will not be stopped. People from the coastline may feel like helping me at some point. Maybe even putting me up somewhere in a studio to where I can do something for a few weeks and take a break from the hill and then come back after a few weeks. Maybe there's someone listening in Denver right now that can put me up in a hotel or motel or somewhere near there. I actually have a relative. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'll talk more at VHX. I mean, that's the modern day and age that we're in, folks. I still care about you, but people have been cruel to me throughout my life, and the audience will have to come to an adult understanding that as a result, I don't view the entirety of anyone that can view YouTube as a friendly force. And certain things you don't talk about on the internet as a public figure to protect yourself and to protect others. You just don't. You don't do it. Because if you're out there trying to beam out truth, right, it's complicated when you bring in other things that are personal that can be used as distractions. And the nature, the heaviness, the things that I talk about makes me very, worried about others. And so I live alone. I don't have much of a social life. And part of that almost seems to be for other people's protection, even if that sounds really, really sad. Because nothing's private when it comes to email, when it comes to people, acting like email is a private, confidential way of communicating. We need to return in whatever simple ways that we can to healthy relationships that are not on the internet. And if that doesn't necessarily include other humans, then we need to develop a deeper relationship with animals, the mountains, and the elements, and ourselves. And that can be done through a meditative practice. And there are stages to the meditative practice that somebody can embark on. And so we'll talk about that at another time. I'm also trying to, in my own, I guess, perception of spiritual growth, let go. That's why I say it's a perception, because sometimes I perceive that I need to let go from this type of feeling, that I need to warn this very large population of the female gender which lives inside the United States. And I want future generations to know, I mean, it's not your fault. You weren't even born during this time. But it was so heartbreaking to see a nation of so-called awake people, energy workers, conspiracy theorists, completely ignore my core warning for the West Coast in the coming 2020s under occupation. And how I would feel that the machine would see me in a certain light, so would humans, but I would feel alone and warning about something that clearly seems to be on its way. Could certain things like this, whether he is knowing of this or not, we're not necessarily going that far, but could certain things, knowingly or unknowingly, directly or inadvertently, result in that type of roundup situation? As we look at the map now, which comes to us from Fox News, in light of my warnings for 10 years, does it really seem that crazy that human trafficking could get worse, whatever the cause? How can things like this, if Trump doubles down and triples down, how can things like that then be good? Especially if they choose to hand select the people that they release. Wouldn't that be interesting? So yeah, this does complete today's podcast. I am excited to connect with an old friend. And so we will be producing some content in the members area. We'll see you over there. OutsideTheBox.vhx.tv.